They called it the Curse of the Pharaoh, a warning carved into stone, buried under the sands for more than 3,000 years. And when modern men disturbed it, one by one, they started to die. Coincidence, or proof that even the dead can protect their secrets? In November 1922, British archaeologist Howard Carter stood before a sealed door deep inside the Valley of the Kings. Behind that door lay the tomb of Tutankhamun, the boy pharaoh who ruled Egypt over 30 centuries ago. For years, explorers believed that every royal tomb had already been plundered. But Carter refused to give up. For 6 long years, he dug under the scorching Egyptian sun, funded by his wealthy patron, Lord Carnarvon. And then, one morning, when his candlelight flickered through a small hole in the wall, he whispered words that would echo through history. "I see wonderful things." What he saw was beyond imagination: golden statues, jeweled chariots, amulets, and a sarcophagus untouched by time. The entire world celebrated the greatest archaeological discovery of the century. But what no one realized was that, from that moment on, the countdown had already begun. Just 5 months later, Lord Carnarvon, the man who financed the excavation, fell ill in Cairo. It started with a simple mosquito bite on his cheek. The wound became infected. Fever set in. Then came pneumonia. On the night of April 5th, 1923, he died. At that exact moment, the lights of Cairo reportedly flickered and went out. And far away in England, his dog let out a cry and died the same night. Newspapers across the world exploded with headlines: "The Pharaoh's curse strikes again." Superstitions spread faster than the desert wind. Soon, more deaths followed. George J. Gould, an American tycoon who visited the tomb, died of a sudden fever shortly after returning home. Aubrey Herbert, Lord Carnarvon's own half-brother, went blind and then died mysteriously. Sir Archibald Douglas Reed, the radiologist who first examined Tutankhamun's mummy, also fell ill and never recovered. Within a few years, over 20 people connected to the tomb had died unexpectedly to the public. It was undeniable. The curse was real. Even Carter himself began to feel the weight of unseen eyes. He returned home one evening to find his house vandalized, his pet canary dead, killed by a cobra, Egypt's sacred serpent, symbol of divine retribution. To the locals, that wasn't coincidence. It was a message from the afterlife. The pharaoh's spirit was defending what was his. Rumors grew wild. Reporters claimed that Carter had found an inscription above the tomb's entrance. It supposedly read, "Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the king." The words alone could freeze blood. But here's the mystery. No photograph of that inscription has ever been found. It appears in no official notes or journals. Was it ever real? Or was it a story crafted by newspapers to feed the fear that sold millions of copies? Still, something about the pattern of deaths felt too perfect, too poetic, to ignore. How could coincidence mimic prophecy so precisely? Years later, scientists began to search for a rational answer. They discovered that sealed tombs, like Tutankhamun's, could harbor deadly organisms, spores of ancient fungi and bacteria that had lain dormant for thousands of years. When disturbed, They could fill the air with toxins capable of infecting lungs and shutting down vital organs. In fact, when researchers later examined samples from similar tombs, they detected Aspergillus flavus, a fungus known to produce lethal toxins. So perhaps the Pharaoh's curse wasn't mystical at all, but microbial, not divine wrath, but ancient biology awakening after centuries of silence. And yet, even science couldn't explain the eerie timing, the coincidences, the symbolic deaths that lined up with the myth. The story had taken on a life of its own. It blurred the line between fact and fear, logic and legend. But one question remained. If the curse was truly real, why did Howard Carter himself survive? The man who broke the seal, who touched the treasures, who looked upon the face of the boy king. He lived 16 more years, dying peacefully in 1939 at the age of 64. How did he escape what killed so many others? Some say he respected the tomb's sanctity, never removing relics for greed. Others believe the Pharaoh's spirit saw him not as a thief, but as a messenger, chosen to awaken the memory of Egypt. There were even whispers that Carter himself became the curse, as final guardian, the last man the Pharaoh spared so that the story would live forever. To the ancient Egyptians, death was not the end. It was only a passage, a journey into the afterlife, guided by rituals, symbols, and faith. Their tombs were not graves, but gateways. Every painting, every amulet, every hieroglyph was meant to protect that passage. So when modern hands tore those seals open, it was not just gold they disturbed, but eternity itself. Maybe the curse was never about punishment. Maybe it was protection, a spiritual alarm, designed not to harm, but to warn that certain knowledge, certain power, must remain sacred. Perhaps that is why the legend refuses to die. It survives in every retelling, in every whisper of desert wind, in every shadow that dances on the stone walls of the Valley of the Kings. And that's the true power of the Pharaoh's curse. It's not the deaths it caused, but the story it created. A story strong enough to make the world question science, fate, and fear. A story that reminds us that some doors in history were never meant to be opened. Because even after 3,000 years, the dead still know how to keep their secrets. End narration, slow fade with cinematic echo, and desert wind ambience.